Marcel Marceau, master of mime. Little Marcel searched for a jacket. Father would have one. Pants too, and shoes. A hat, and Marcel's outfit was complete. When he strode out into the Strasbourg streets, he was no longer Marcel. He was Charlie Chaplin, star of the silent movies. Marcel's father Charles was a kosher butcher. A supporter of the arts, he enjoyed introducing his young son to music and theater. He had taken Marcel to one of Chaplin's movies. The boy was fascinated that the actor could make his audience laugh or cry without ever speaking a word. Marcel decided he would grow up to be like Charlie. Marcel couldn't have known then, he was only 5, but these were the last days of the silent movies. The first talkies had already appeared, and movie audiences loved hearing the actors speak. People would soon forget how to enjoy silence, but Marcel would remember. Marcel Mangel grew up in Strasbourg on the border of France and Germany. Neighborhood children loved his impersonations of birds, butterflies, lions, and tigers. They often gathered around Marcel's house and shouted for him to come out and perform. He could always make them laugh. Marcel spent summers at his aunt's camp, where he was popular entertainer. Children begged their parents to send them when they knew Marcel would be there. But Europe was changing. Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party had come to power in Germany and wanted to rule the rest of Europe. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. The same day, the French government ordered the people of Strasbourg to leave their city. They were allowed to bring only what they could carry and enough food for 4 days. In just a few hours, the homes of Strasbourg were empty, except for the clothes, books, and furniture the people left behind. Marcel and his older brother Alain fled to Limoges. Marcel attended school there. He studied art. By the next summer, the Nazis had taken over much of France. They passed new laws that made life difficult and even dangerous. Jews were forced into ghettos and sent to concentration camps. But in many places, ordinary men and women were secretly working to fight the Nazis. Limoges was a center of the French resistance. Alain joined, and 16-year-old Marcel, using his drawing skills, began to help. In secret, with crayon and ink, Marcel carefully altered photos and changed birth dates on identity cards so the children would seem to be too young to be sent to labor camps. His forged cards helped fool the Nazis and saved many children. Marcel, too, took on a new identity. He changed his last name to Marceau after a general of the French Revolution. One day, Marcel's cousin, Georges, a leader of the resistance, asked Marcel to lead a group of Jewish children to the Swiss border. It was a dangerous trip. Marcel was scared, but he hid his fear as he guided the children across the border into Switzerland and safety. Marcel made the trip several times, often dressing the children as Boy Scouts, pretending to be on their way to camp. On one trip, Marcel got the children singing so happily that Nazis traveling on the same train complimented them on their voices. The Nazis had no idea that Marcel was smuggling the children out of France right under their noses. Life was growing even more dangerous. The German police arrested Marcel's father and deported him to Auschwitz. To keep Marcel safe, his mother sent him to a children's home outside of Paris. There, the Jewish children were assigned code names for their protection. Marcel's code name was Kangaroo. Marcel had never given up his dream of becoming a silent actor. He taught drama and art to the other children, created new plays, and did Charlie Chaplin imitations to entertain them. One day, when Marcel was 20 years old, a theater historian saw Marcel perform and suggested he study at the drama school of the famous actor and director Charles Dullin. Though the war continued, Marcel was able to study at Dullin's drama school in Paris. He worked under the famous mime Etienne Decroux, who taught him how to use movement and facial expressions to tell stories without speaking. Although mime is an ancient art, by the middle of the 20th century, it had almost been forgotten. Few people had ever seen mime or could appreciate it. Many of Marcel's classmates teased the mime students and their funny movements. 2 hours on stage without speaking was impossible, they thought. Who would watch? But Marcel didn't give up. In August 1944, Paris was liberated from the Nazis, and Marcel joined the Free French Army. Because he could speak English, he served as liaison to the US forces under General George Patton. In his spare time, he performed for the Allied troops in Germany. It was one of these performances before 3,000 American soldiers in an army tent that earned Marcel his very first review as a mime. Once the war was over, Marcel devoted all his time to the stage. He spent long hours perfecting his art and creating the character who would make him famous. One day in 1947, Marcel strode out onto a stage in a tiny Paris theater. He wore white face paint, tight-fitting pants, a striped shirt, flower, a crumpled hat. It was his first stage appearance as Bip. Bip was a kind of clown. He was a little like Pierrot, the sad white-faced French clown, and a little like Charlie Chaplin's clumsy, kind-hearted little tramp. But no one had ever seen a character exactly like Bip. Bip's dreams and adventures became a part of all Marcel's stage performances. As audiences watched Bip act out memories of his life before the war, the audience could feel what it was like to lose their home, family, and possessions. Soon, when people saw Marcel, they thought of Bip, and when they saw Bip, they thought of Marcel. When Marcel performed, the audience saw things that were not there. Alone on stage, he created illusions. He chased butterflies. He operated machinery. He leaned on invisible mantelpieces and climbed imaginary steps. In silence, Marcel showed the lives of ordinary people. A little boy playing, an old lady knitting on a park bench, a balloon seller trying to hold onto his balloons in the blowing wind. He acted out life from birth to death, beginning as a baby and ending as an old man. For over 60 years, Marcel spoke to people without words. He performed his silent shows all over the world before children and adults, presidents and prisoners. He opened a school for mime, and people came from all over the world to study with him. By the time he died in 2007, Marcel had revived the ancient and almost forgotten art of silence.